Right. Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's LEAP webinar. I'm Nora, your host for the session on skills management best practices to maximize your talent. It's great to have you all here in this virtual room. I work as a new work and transformation consultant, helping organizations create better ways of working, ones that are more flexible, people-focused, and actually make sense in today's world. And skills management plays a huge role in that. And I'm really excited to explore this topic today with you. To kick things off, we would like for you to respond to a quick pulse check. So Edam, feel free to now start our poll. We've prepared a short poll to understand how your organization approaches skills management. The two questions are around how does your organization currently track and manage skills, and what's your biggest challenge in skills management? So feel free to just have a think on this, and we'll do our very best to weave your answers into our discussion today. And let's give it a few more seconds. Really curious. You can also select multiple options. And Edam, feel free to close the poll. Let's have a look. Thank you. And the results. Okay, drum rolls, please. On question number 1, how does your organization currently track and manage skills? We've got the winner with 30%, a dedicated skills management platform, along with also 30%. We don't have a formal process yet, so two quite opposite answers have the most votes. Then we've got 20% a custom-built internal system, for example, spreadsheets and databases. And we've got 10% with part of an HR or resource management tool, and others. For the person who chose other, please feel free to share with us in the chat what other solution you found. Okay, so most people have either a dedicated skills management platform or don't have a formal process yet. And the biggest challenge, question number 2, let's see. We've got the winner with 56%, making skills data actionable. That's very interesting. Okay, so how to action on skills data. And the second highest rated question answer is identifying the right skills to track. Ooh, that's a good challenge for sure. And then on the third place, we've got keeping skills data up to date, gaining leadership buy-in for a skills first approach. Yes, nice. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for taking part in this. As mentioned, we'll try to connect our webinar and discussion to where you're at in terms of skills management to the best of our abilities. So this webinar is part of Runn's LEAP webinar series, LEAP Igniting the Future of Resource Management. At Runn, we do believe resource management is so much more than just schedules and spreadsheets. It's really about creating smarter and more human-centered ways of working. And with LEAP, our goal is to challenge the traditional approach to resource management, to spark fresh ideas, and to bring inspiring new perspectives to the resource management community. And together, we're going to explore what the future of resource management could and should look like. This webinar is brought to you by Runn. Runn helps teams effortlessly match the right people to the right work, making resource management smoother, smarter, and hopefully less of a headache. And just a quick heads up, Runn will be at the RMI Global Symposium from April the 7th to April the 9th in Indianapolis. Our COO, Nicole Tiefensee, will be hosting a very nice session on 5 common challenges in capacity forecasting and how to overcome them. So if you're attending the symposium, please make sure to stop by at the Runn booth and say hi. And also, I would love to see you at the session that Nicole will be giving. We'll use the last 15 minutes for our question and answer. So as you're listening to our conversation, as we're going to explore skills management, feel very invited to capture your questions in the Q&A section. I can see that there's already something. Someone already put something in the Q&A, and feel free to use this function in our webinar today, and also use the chat for any thoughts, any reflections, any questions, maybe to the fellow audience members. And something that we always appreciate as panelists on this webinar is if you use any reactions. It just makes it a bit more lively, and we know you're there. It's not just us speaking to ourselves. Nice. So now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our incredible speakers who bring a wealth of experience in both skills management and resource planning. First, we have Sid Mills with us for a second webinar, a seasoned operations leader with over a decade of experience in resource management. As the professional services strategy and operations manager at Instructure, she specializes in turning complexity into clarity, helping organizations optimize their operational strategies across industries like tech, healthcare, education, and more. Sid, it's a treat to have you join our discussion today.
Thanks so much, Nora. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
Nice. And next, we have Julie McKelvey, CEO of GEM Resource Management Solutions and a global resource manager with a proven track record of optimizing workforce allocation and driving efficiency. Julie has held leadership roles at Advantive, Mission Cloud, and App Dynamics, where she's helped businesses make smarter, data-driven decisions in resource management. Julie, I am so excited to welcome you back to our LEAP stage.
Thank you, Nora. Happy to be here.
And finally, we have Ollie Meager, co-founder of the Skill Collective and a true disruptor in the consulting space. He's with us here today for the first time. Ollie specializes in HR tech, talent transformation, and workforce development, helping organizations rethink their approach to skills management. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ollie.
Thank you for having me, Nora. Appreciate it. I'd like you to do my intro on every call I have personally, but no, thank you for having me.
It would be my absolute pleasure. Cool. So in our webinar today, we will explore how to build a practical and effective skills management system, covering best practices, common challenges, and real-world insights to help you turn skills data into a powerful tool for workforce planning and business success. So let's kick right into things, team. I am always after the why. So here, my first question again is, why does skills management matter? How does it create impact at both an organizational and a resource management level? And Sid, I would invite you to kick us off.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, skills management is really a foundational topic for any organization. I feel like it's the common thread between sales and delivery. It connects the communication between the two. It really gives an understanding of what the company is providing to their clients and their customers. It allows for trend management in that regard. There's also a human element to it of really matching up people with the right skills that they have, as well as helping them excel in their careers and matching them to things that they may want to learn about as well. So there's a human element to it as well that I really enjoy.
Beautifully put. Couldn't agree more. Julie, what would you add from your resource management lens?
Sure. So I think, one of the other things is it really is the first step to making an accurate assignment to a project. And if you can make that accurate assignment in the beginning, you really eliminate most of the risk of any sort of hiccup in project delivery, reassigning, giving away work for free, making concessions and pieces like that. The other thing is knowing what skills your teams have and making sure you're utilizing those in the right places also maximizes their billable utilization.
Mhm. Yeah, very well put. So there's definitely a big cost connection and accuracy. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Julie. And Ollie, from your perspective as a consultant on this topic, what would you add? Why does skills management matter?
I think it's really just the foundation for business success, to be honest. I think so often we actually forget that people, or like human capital as we call it, it's the most costly part of any business doing business, right? And we have to be able to manage the skills of our people in the right way. And therefore, skills management isn't just an HR initiative.
Mm.
It's a critical business initiative. And without a structured approach to it, organizations of all shapes and sizes, they're going to face really costly inefficiencies around skills and around people. It could be organizations over hiring, due to poor visibility of internal talent because you haven't got a skills management system in place. Could lead to things like mismatched staffing and project staffing, which is going to lead to things like low job satisfaction and
Mhm.
higher turnover rates. Um, and then, from a learning and development or talent development standpoint, the expensive upskilling programs that organizations are rolling out, they're going to be more expensive because actually they're not matching business priorities. So it really is, it's a foundation for business success now.
100% agree. I think what the three of you have very well laid out is there are so many dimensions why skills management is important. My follow-up question is around the 30% who mentioned in our poll question they don't have a system in place yet. For them to make a compelling business case to leadership, maybe could you each give one key word? What is the most compelling business case for leadership to invest in setting up a skills management system in one bullet? Ollie, would you like to start?
I'll go for it, Nora. I'll go for it. It's really linking to C-level initiatives. So you're thinking of unlocking time and increasing money. If
Mm-hmm.
you can get that thread right, that is why this is absolutely critical on a business standpoint. I'll stop there because otherwise I'm going to go into a second bullet.
Right, yes. So link it to the C-level strategy and exactly show how it's contributing to their goals. Nice. Sid, Julie, is there anything else that springs into your mind for the case?
I was going to mention something along the same lines, aligning to C-suite vision,
Yeah.
cost optimization.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I think that, really when you do talk about that, it directly speaks to C-level because they are about billable utilization, right? They're about that revenue. The only other thing that I might add to that is actually that employee satisfaction piece, right?
Mm.
Where they're actually working on projects where they have the skills and they can go in and really make an impact with the customer and impact customer satisfaction.
Love it. Well said, all three of you. Thank you. Hopefully, those thoughts can contribute to helping more organizations tap into this. Now, our next question is around what does great skills management look like in practice? So what are really the best practices? And through our prep sessions, we were able to distill 8 key fundamental best practices that I'm just going to share on a slide. So for that next section, let's walk through what we have distilled from the perspective the three of you brought together and dive into skills management best practices. So number one was around maintain a clear and navigable skills inventory. Let's have a look at that. And maybe Julie, if you want, you can kick us off, and Sid and Ollie can contribute some thoughts on top.
Sure. So the reality of building a skills inventory is no matter how big or small, it is a beast to put into play within your organization. So, one of the things that you want to make sure is you have enough skills to make an accurate assignment, but you don't have too many skills. And, the skills that you have are valid. I know we looked at, some of the key things that you should look at, like the role, the time zone, technical skills, soft skills, language, certification. Every business is going to do that a little differently, and their requirements are going to be different. It's a very fine line, right, between having a balance of this is too much and this is not enough, and I still really can't make that assignment. The other piece to that is the education. And it's of your project managers, it's of your delivery managers or your practice managers, and also of your technical resources. Why are we asking them for this information? Why do they constantly have to update that? And I think that the more you can get out in front of that education piece when you kick off this process, the better off you will be, the greater buy-in you get, and also the greater success you're going to have.
Very nice. Awesome. Thanks, Julie, for kicking us
Sure.
off with best practice number one. Sid, from your RM perspective, what else do you think is important to highlight on this specific point?
Yeah, I think Julie nailed it with everything that was stated. Um, I think my key takeaway from this one is really clear and navigable, simplified skills management to create. I mean, Julie called it out to really create buy-in, but you want ease of use so that um, it can be updated and maintained. And I feel that that's kind of a key element here is just making it something that is very intuitive, that doesn't take a lot of learning to delve in and action on.
Yeah, very true. Ollie, anything you can add? You don't have to.
No, no, absolutely. More than happy to. And a couple of kind of real life examples I think could be useful here for everyone listening. So, we're doing a lot of work with, pretty complex global organizations on this exact topic. And one of the common mistakes that we often see is, when we're talking about skills inventory, sometimes it's semantics, right? We could be talking about a skills taxonomy at the same time. And a common mistake is overcomplicating them. Like many companies track thousands, like tens of thousands of skills. Like our human minds only have like the capacity for about 15,000 words. There's no point having 65,000 skills in your skills taxonomy. It makes a system too complex to actually be useful. But on the kind of flip side, you can't have it too basic because you need to be able to go to a granular enough detail to match the right people to the right work. If I think of a couple of examples where we've done some work with the likes of DHL, for instance, they were initially trying to track like highly granular skills, but that created too much noise within the system. But then what they looked to do was like group skills into meaningful clusters so that the system was actually usable on a workforce planning basis. So those components of a well-functioning system are really important. I'm sure we'll get to those within the conversation. But what's really important here when we're talking about a skills inventory, it's not just the skills that are in supply of like the workforce that you've got, it's like the demand for skills, right, which is actually the work that has to get done. I think Julie and Sid, you've both mentioned it, like that's kind of the most important. What is the work that is being done? What are the projects that are being solved? What are the programs of work that need to be delivered on? And if you go too complex, what we've seen is that over complexity leads to actual matching of skills to work. It just doesn't work. Because you
Mm-hmm.
might have a level of complexity on the demand side, as in the project that needs to be filled, where there's like 65 skills aligned to a role. And then someone as an individual with 57 skills on their profile, matching within a system just doesn't work very well. So, that it's just not, don't overcomplicate your skills taxonomy just because there's some hype out there and, AI this and AI that telling you to do so.
Ah, that's brilliant. So I almost wonder if we could synthesize this point on basically having as few skills in your skills inventory as possible to still function and to still make that matchmaking work. Would that be a fair synthesis?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the slide that you're on kind of says it all.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise globally about skills, right? And it's almost like skill, I'm putting like in inverted commas here with my hands, but it's like skills is this catch-all term that's going to solve all problems. It's like, no, it's not. It's another workforce data point. It's very
Mm-hmm.
important, but it's just another workforce data point. The role that you're in, the technical skills you have, the soft skills that you have, the languages that you speak, but importantly, like where you've applied that in the past and where you've got kind of the certifications and credentials to be able to do that work, they're equally important. So let's not just boil the ocean with all things skills.
Yeah. Wow. Very powerful. I fully love it. Nice. Sid, Julie, are you okay for me to move on to the second or any last points to make here? All good?
I think we're good.
Nice. Brilliant. The second one is around, and this really gets me going, standardization and role definition. So important. Sid, could you kick us off here?
Sure, sure. Yeah, this really speaks to just making sure that the categories of work are in similar categories for the work.
Mhm.
So engineers are engineers. Solutions architects are solutions architects, so that you're able to really match up that role to the appropriate work. And you don't have random titling out there that again throws off the simplification and the intuitiveness of using your skills database or skills methodology. So that's kind of my takeaway here is just, again, it speaks to simplification, but just in another realm of the role
Mhm.
definition.
And I think listening to the three of you from your experience, this is utterly important, especially when there are mergers, acquisitions, restructures happening, when there are multiple worlds colliding with different taxonomy and role titles. It can become such a mess, right? So it's almost yeah, a spring clean of sort to come together with those different yeah, entities who were separate previously and really define how do we want to standardize this across all parts of the business. Yeah, nice. Julie, keen to pick your brain on this.
Sure. So, at a previous position, I did actually implement a skills inventory. And I was fortunate enough to get HR buy in to go ahead and align those roles, not only across professional services, but across HR as well.
Mm,
And, we had about 100 technical resources, and I think we had 82 different roles. So essentially, everyone had their own unique role. Okay, that will never work. Getting HR buy-in was really huge because going forward, it made that role assignment much easier as people came in. One of the things that you can keep in mind is, if HR gives someone a title and that's their job title within the system, that doesn't necessarily have to match what you've set up in your skills inventory. You're going to have that kind of, we'll call it a category header of role, and you can categorize those people under what their actual delivery role is and what work they're going to perform within a project. So those don't always have to match. Getting HR buy-in is definitely the way to go, and it's amazing
mhm,
if you can do that. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And I
mm,
think, keeping in mind too that within that role, there are going to be some standard skills that they have, but there could also be variations within a role as to what people's capabilities are. And that's where those other categories that you showed on the slide prior to this, that's where those really become key as well.
Very nice. Ollie, hard to add anything, but you have such a wealth of experience. Anything you've seen in the field on this that has worked really well or something to watch out for?
Yeah, I'm like you, Nora. This part kind of gets me a little bit excited because it's a problem that wasn't really identified 2 or 3 years ago when we started on the Skill Collective journey, but it's something that is really just critical now for organizations all over the world. You know, when we're talking about standardization of skill terminology and why it's so important. Julie, you were talking very much about the HR buy-in. And what we see is, yeah, there's HR buy-in from across all of the different functions of HR, right? So it's like talent acquisition buy-in, talent management, talent development, learning, people analytics, workforce planning, whatever it might be. And actually maybe even taking it a step further and getting business buy-in. So the business feels that the right skills are aligned to the right roles within the system. That's really important. But from a kind of a standardization or kind of common language perspective, it's so important to standardize that across the different functions and across the different technologies that might be present within an organization's ecosystem. And the reason why that's important is, you know, if I think of some of the work that we've done with probably one of the best examples here is Cigna Healthcare over in the US, big kind of global health insurance business. They had a crazy issue where they've got a fragmented technology ecosystem. It wasn't too fragmented, but the taxonomies were very, very different. So if someone was applying for a role externally, they might be a match for 10 out of the 10 skills that were aligned to that role. They'd come in, they get into Workday, they might get then a learning profile once they're onboarded, they might get a kind of talent mobility and project staffing profile within a different system, but all of the taxonomies are completely different. And there's enough change fatigue and technology fatigue going on for people at the moment as it is. So as an employee within a global organization, if I've got multiple different profiles in multiple different systems, but one skill in one system says I've got great teamwork skills, but the other system says it's teaming, and then the other system says it's working together with other people. Like I get a bit annoyed as an employee at that point. So what you needed to do is kind of have this common language that can possibly sit across all of that. And those technology platforms can extract the skill data in the right way to drive a really common experience. So that's really, really important.
Love it. What a great example. Yeah. I wonder what the best word for teamwork now is. But let's leave that for later. So best practice that we distilled here, Julie, could you just kind of summarize it from your perspective?
Sure. You know, I think this kind of goes back to the point I said that if a role is used within the project, it needs to be clearly defined. And I think more so defined in your skills inventory than across the organization. Again, great if you get the buy-in and you can do it all the way across the organization. But if not, make sure it's workable for delivery because that's where your focus is.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's move on to best practice number 3. Link skills management to business outcomes. So here we're already seeing a link to our business case question earlier. I wonder, Julie, could you kick us off with this one?
Sure. You know, we talked about how assigning the right person really greatly impacts revenue and billable utilization. And with this, you know, I think you can take that one step further. And when you look at what those skills are, you get into training plans and cross training plans, and you get into mitigating risk, right? And when you start looking at those things, you can also get some pretty accurate capacity planning so you can project your staffing needs into the future. One of the things that is very key in looking at how you're going to do staffing and capacity planning is getting different stakeholders involved and working cross-departmentally. Sales is huge in your sales pipeline. You need their buy-in to this. You need their input to say these projects are coming in. So I would recommend, working with them, working with your professional service leaders, working with your delivery managers, have regular interlocks with your project managers. Hear like what's going on, what are they hearing from the customer, and all of those things are going to make those revenue numbers accurate, which, let's be honest, that's really important. They love accurate revenue numbers, and really be able to let you plan in the future and make sure that you're mitigating risk and being more proactive than reactive.
Wow, amen. So well said, Julie. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ollie, how do you look at this point?
Yeah, I think, this goes back to earlier in the conversation, right, when we're talking about, the business linking skills management to business outcomes, because one of the biggest challenges that companies face is like justifying this as a business priority.
Mhm.
Too often it's seen as that HR initiative rather than like a core business imperative. So the key is, connecting skills to measurable business outcomes. So this is taking it above things like, sometimes skills are used to say, for instance, oh, we improved our internal mobility rate by X percentage. And that's great. But what's the actual business outcome out of that? Because HR, resource management, they need to be able to justify to the business when money is being spent on certain initiatives. So actually being able to identify the business objective that you're tying this into, that might be something like revenue growth and market expansion. It might be things like better workforce planning resulting in greater cost efficiencies. Julie, I think you were talking about like cost optimization a little bit earlier on. So it's finding the tangible link between a skills initiative or skills management approach that's actually going to have a positive impact on what the C-suite are saying that they're going to be driving for the business over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Because once you find that common thread, it's a lot easier to get justification for spend on certain initiatives.
Yeah, well said. Very nice. Sid, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just real quickly. This is actually the theme that gets me excited. Um, and the reason why is I feel like this really shows the value in resource management. Resource managers have such a key role besides just, scheduling. They really are involved in strategy and helping with business outcomes. And I just wanted to make that point because every bullet point here kind of ties to that thread of this is really business strategy, and resource managers have such a key role in that.
Yeah, totally. Nice. Thank you so much for the addition. Then our next one, I think, is something we already touched upon, but can't be overstated. Keep it simple and practical. So on top of what we already shared, Ollie, I think you're unmuting yourself. Anything that is super critical to take away from this webinar on this point?
I think there's two things on this point that I think about is the bullet point number one there is absolutely right. Like start small and iterate. I always link this back to we haven't evolved as a human species by going all out like big bang, let's just do everything all at once. We do things by just getting started and experimenting and
Yes.
not being afraid to fail, because the reason why we get better at everything is because we fail, we make mistakes, and then we learn from those mistakes, we iterate and we make it better next time. So identifying a key pilot group, for instance, to get this to work, linking back to previous topics around the business outcome, you find a group where it actually has a tangible impact very, very quickly. That is going to be kind of the number one thing. The only other bullet point I would add to that, and I've kind of already alluded to it, is just start. Like, we can be our own worst enemies in this and just overanalyze and procrastinate around what's the best way to do something. Like, how do we do the change management around this? Just get started. Because if you overanalyze it, you'll never start.
Mm, amazing. I 100% agree with everything you just said. Julie, what's your perspective on this?
Sure. I think, one of the things, and I think all three of us have alluded to this at some point, right, is you have to start somewhere.
Mm,
And really, it's when you go to start and dive into this, it's looking at what's most important, right? And keeping that as small as you can to still get the crucial information. But keep in mind as well that you should be updating this quarterly. So
mm,
there's always room to make changes and to add. And maybe as you go through and you start using this, you find things maybe are, I don't know, obsolete technology, or maybe you're not using a certain soft skill anymore that you thought was really important. You can always delete those things, you can always add things. This is a living, breathing document that will constantly change.
yeah, well put. Makes it a lot less stressful to approach this topic. Yes. Sid, anything else from your perspective, maybe even around the client language? I think we haven't really touched upon that point. I think it's a really nice angle too.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Julie and Ollie said. Yeah, for that point, and it was something I was going to touch on, is just what is important right now for the project set that you deliver on. um, what is going to be the key pivotal skills to actually assign someone on a particular project or product delivery. Um, that is kind of a good place to start. Um, and that client language to internal language kind of touches on that a little bit. What is the end result that the client is looking for, and what is a pivotal skill that will make that happen? It doesn't need to be, 50 skills, but what is the one thing that can make that happen, and just sort of start there with your current project load.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you all so much for making this point super clear. We're moving on to best practice number 5, establish a cross-functional skills focus group. And before we dive into this, I just want to encourage everyone listening to input your questions on this topic into the Q&A. You now have the chance, the unique opportunity to pick 3 people's brain who are absolutely passionate about this topic. So utilize this unique time. There are already 2 questions in. Please keep them coming. We would love to answer them shortly when we're done with the best practices. So now, the skills focus group. Sid, could you help us out? What is this all about?
Sure. So this is something that I've always wanted to implement, and I've never really gotten there. So this is a little bit of Sid's dream world that I'm going into here. But skills management is such a cross-functional um, idea, and it is managed cross-functionally. And I had sort of had the idea in the past of creating something like a skills focus group in the company, where you get department heads from the different departments that need to be involved in skills. You get them together at a regular cadence meeting cycle. So your resource manager, your project manager, director, or PMO director, HR, your delivery managers, definitely someone from sales or a solutions architect type role. Get all of those folks together quarterly, as Julie said, or whatever cadence makes sense for the organization, to really go through and review the skills matrix. What are the skills needed again for the project SOWs that we're creating, from a solutions architect, focus, like the scope that we're creating. Um, what are the skills that match to that scope? And then you have delivery managers in there evaluating their technical teams or delivery teams, and really looking at the skills that that team member has and updating that. But it's a really great way, I feel, to kind of gather the people that can help together, um, and make sure that you're also maintaining that skills matrix on a regular basis.
Yes. Thanks for sharing your dream with us. Maybe we can all partner up on making this more of a reality in the organizations of our world. Julie, keen to maybe hear your perspective on this idea of the skills focus group.
Sure. So I love Sid's dream. I think, that would be wonderful. And we talk a lot about buy-in and education, right? This would be the perfect place to go through those pieces and really make sure that everyone who needs to be involved and who needs to buy into this process has that opportunity to have the open conversation, ask the questions, really make sure that everyone is aligned and go ahead and get their buy-in to implementing this and getting their suggestions as well. As a resource manager, we're certainly trained and educated on how to do this, but gosh, there's always that one thing that you didn't think of. And, when I started this off, I said, no matter how big or small, it's a beast to implement. It really is. So having more minds looking at that and, more eyes on what you're doing will really help make that successful right off the bat.
Amazing. Nice. Thanks, both of you. Ollie, anything from your perspective?
I'm with you, Sid. This is dreamland, right? But it's also so important. If I think of the work, we're undertaking with, I know we mentioned Cigna recently, they're doing something very similar, but also Cisco too. You can call a cross-functional skills focus group different things, right? It could be a skills COE, or we could be talking about a governance structure fundamentally. And the governance structure is so important that it involves not just kind of resource management, project management, everything that you see on the screen, but actually it's the business unit buy-in. If you've got the right structure in place, that the business units across the organization feel like they have ownership in the skills inventory rather than it being an HR-driven process, that is gold. And if you've got that regular kind of cadence point to kind of make that governance structure scalable and sustainable over time, that's amazing. The one thing I would add for everyone listening here is that, almost like as a piece of advice, that what we've seen work in these kind of structures and governance structures is not necessarily to have a skills conversation with those business units. Because personally, if anyone asks me like, hey, Ollie, what are your top 8 to 10 skills that you have? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's really hard to actually answer that question. Whereas actually, if you're asking business units and business strategy leaders, like, what work needs to get done? What tasks are being completed in your in your unit to be able to deliver on your business strategy? You have a work-related conversation that you can then elicit the skills from that to make sure that the skills management inventory, etc., works right.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, love that. Wow. Okay. So I wonder if we have anything left to say on best practice number 6, which was around implementing a consistent and reliable skills data update process. We already touched a lot upon this with the focus group. What else do you think is important to mention to once you have invested time, money, effort to setting up a skills matrix? What is important then to continue to get value from that? Julie, would you like to start?
Sure. So I think, one of the things is I always mention quarterly because I feel like a lot can change in a quarter with the skills that are obtained, especially if you have, cross-functional training plans in place and you have people shadowing on projects and all of those things that are important for them to obtain new skills. Early and often with the reminders, because generally you have your technical resource saying, hey, I've obtained these new skills, and there's generally some sort of approval process in place before those skills are added to their profile, whether it is a technical manager or a delivery manager, and you want to make sure that those skills are validated as well. So I think, when you look at delivery managers and practice managers and gosh, all the things they do already in their role, and then saying, oh, by the way, could you take this skills inventory and update it every quarter? It's just one more thing. And it tends to get pushed to the bottom of their priority list, right? Because it really is more owned by resource management. So I think, having something in place that makes it easy for them to update and setting those expectations and educating them on how to do that. And then just the reminders. Reminder, reminder, reminder. You don't want to get to the end of the quarter and nothing has been updated, because then you're a quarter behind, and then you're 2 quarters behind, and then a year has passed. And your skills inventory is really only as great as the information that's in it. And if that information gets stale, it really just becomes completely ineffective, as if you didn't even have a skills inventory.
Yes, yes, so utterly important. I see you nodding, Ollie. Just looking at time, I want to save some time for the Q&A. Just very briefly, Ollie, Sid, what are some critical points you would like to add for this last best practice? Ollie, feel free to start.
Yeah, for sure. I think a couple of things like frequency and validation really matter. Julie, to your point, like once a year, twice a year, it's really not enough. You need to be able to tie skills updates to project completion, right? So that skills data reflects real work being done. And using a mix of self-reported, peer-reviewed, manager validated skills is great, but actually setting some principles and standards of skills data collection is super important. If you think of like things like financial data, right, there's principles and standards that allow us to trust the data that we see. A lot of organizations don't actually trust and use skills data at their disposal because they don't have a high confidence level in it. So setting principles and standards around what skills data means to the organization is super important. But making sure the message is right for employees. Employees need to be able to trust their employer that they're going to use that skills data for good. And not to inform things like reductions in force, right? There has to be a real high level of trust between employee and employer.
Yeah, well said. Nice, thanks, Ollie. And Sid, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just real quick, there's a couple things that I would add to this. Um, and I think Ollie touched on this, the validation piece. Whether you're having an employee self-assess or whether the company is assessing the skill, I do think there's a room for sort of an approval or manager review. Um, Meaning, a skill at one company may mean one thing, and at another company it means something totally different for the types of project that they deliver. So having some sort of second set of eyes just to clear that the person is skilled up in the way that that company defines that skill, I think is important. And then the last point that I would mention is there's also an element here of adding, in my dream world, adding in talent experience, or someone from HR in career planning in that realm, adding that in, and also adding in skills that maybe the employee would like to learn on their career journey, so that you can match up that employee to areas that they're interested in learning and growing in.
Beautiful. Yes, that's the dream. We all agree on that, I think. Thank you, all three, very much. Yeah, amazing work. Honestly, kudos to you for synthesizing these 6 best practices through our discussions. It's been super enlightening now to have you share your perspectives on these 6. So yeah, just thank you so much. Now we have time to dive into our Q&A. And just for everyone's information, we will follow up with every question, even if it's not during this live webinar. We will absolutely answer all questions. So for those questions we can't answer right now in these 60 minutes of our webinar, we will record a video for you and answer those remaining questions. So please feel free to keep those questions coming. Awesome. So let's kick off with question number 1. What are the key challenges when implementing a skills management system? There are probably many, but maybe we can think of the key challenges. Do you have any recommended change management strategies? And whoever wants to go first can maybe unmute and get going. Julie, I think.
I can jump in, sure.
Yeah.
Having done this a couple of times, some of the challenges are, maybe people don't really understand the importance of it. So it goes back to that education piece that I've talked about and making sure they understand why we're doing this and all of the things that this is going to impact. As far as getting started, I would say, pick your key categories that you want to include in your skills inventory and start with that as your base. And then go ahead and get more granular under each of those categories. Maybe you only roll out 3 categories to those, to those stakeholders that are going to be involved in getting you the information, and just keep building like we've talked about.
Nice. Thanks so much. Ollie, I think you also unmuted yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's two questions in one here, right? Key challenges when implementing and any recommended change management, and trying to keep this as simple as possible. A couple of really big key challenges, like we mentioned earlier, complexity and over engineering it. That's a big one, and also siloed implementation. So making sure that all the different functions within HR are part of something as opposed to being off and doing their own things. They're two massive challenges that we see. And to answer do you have any recommended change management strategies? There are many, but I'd focus on these two. So number one, start small and then scale it up. We've mentioned this previously. Pilot it. Pick that one department or business unit where this is going to have an impact, show the value of it, and communicate the value of that, because that's going to help the change for the next organization or next business unit, sorry, within the organization, and get business buy-in. It's not just a resource management or an HR driven initiative. Let's get some business ownership in it, because then you can tie skills management initiatives to business impact.
100%. Nice. Thanks so much. And just for your information, and for everyone who's with us today, we actually have done a dedicated webinar, which is I would highly recommend to you, on change management for resource managers. Maybe Edom, if you can maybe find it and share the link in the chat, that is absolute gold, also from a Runn customer sharing experience on what worked well for the change side of the things. So maybe we can also copy some thoughts and ideas from him. Sid, what are your thoughts on key challenges and how to overcome them in the change management side?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just thinking of it from a simple, how do you get started? Like that's a huge challenge. How do we even start this process? One thing I would like to add for sure is this is definitely something that shouldn't be done in a silo. There should be a team of people. Um, like we mentioned before, sales, delivery managers, HR. Um, that will actually help with getting started because you're not alone in doing it. You actually have a team working together. I think it also helps with change management because communication is such a huge piece. And if you have a team of people working together and communicating together, it really gets everyone on the same page and gets momentum going for getting it started.
Fantastic. Thanks all of you so much for these answers. Now, I would love to take just a quick moment to share with all of you that our next webinar is going to be in April, on the 29th of April, and we're very excited to be welcoming the RMI on this session. We will have Ryan Childers, the Managing Director from the RMI, join us, together with Matt Webb from Runn. So definitely make sure to sign up for this one. I think it will be a very nice session. And as I mentioned, it will be impossible to answer all of your wonderful questions right now, which is not a problem. We will save them and we will record a video for you, which you will receive in our follow-up email, and we'll also upload it to YouTube. So I'm very, very excited to share that with you just after we recorded it today. Cool. So just before yeah, we continue. We have one more practical example of how resource managers can actually stay on track with skills management in Run very practically. So we would love to share that with you right now for your benefit.
One of the common ways that our clients will use Run to allocate their resources is by skill set. And within Run, the way that works is under Manage here, we have our skills matrix. And where this can be helpful is in two ways. So if you either have an existing skills framework or skills matrix that might reside in a spreadsheet, you can move that into Run, and there's ways of just better leveraging that information. But what Run also does is it provides you an opportunity to build up a skills matrix if you don't already have one. And this can be impactful in a multitude of ways. And one of those is actually through upskilling. And what I mean by that is if we just take, let's say, our people that are skilled in AI, we can see that within that skill set, there's a proficiency level of anywhere from 1 to 4. Now, for example, if we had Kirsten here, who's a 3 out of 4, and she has perhaps maybe expressed a desire to be more proficient in AI, what's really common is that you'll actually staff Kirsten on a project with someone that is a bit more experienced. So you might ensure, someone like Cece or John is on an upcoming project to help move her from a 3 to a 4 so that she's more proficient in that specific skill set. Where this is also really impactful is when you're collecting this information, it gives you visibility into where your demand for certain skills are coming from. And where our clients will leverage Run for that is actually within the people planner. So it's really common that when they're going through forecasting, they want to understand, okay, what skill sets are in demand? Where do we need to hire? Where do we maybe need to, pull back our hiring in certain skill sets? And that can be done by grouping their resources by skills. So if we can do this, we can see actually right away that it gives us a visual forecast of where our skills are in high demand. So if we just look at our resources that are skilled in backend, we can see that there's actually a high demand for that skill set within those first few weeks of April. And part of forecasting is understanding what the future outlook is going to be and understanding what that future demand looks like. So if we look at turning on all of our tentative projects to look at, okay, if we take on all those projects in the future, how does that impact our demand? So when we do that, we can see there's a pretty sharp impact on a variety of different skills. And what this immediately does is it is highlighting that you have more demand for those skill sets than you have resources that have those skill sets. So this is often information that is then shared back with HR, it's shared with recruitment so that they know which skill sets to go out and hire for.
Amazing. So I hope that practical insight helps you. So now it is almost time to say goodbye. This is really a moment to appreciate the wonderful webinar speakers we've had on the stage today. Sid, Julie, thank you for joining us a second time. Ollie, it's been an absolute pleasure to welcome you on the stage for the first time. And from the bottom of my heart, a big, big thank you for generously sharing your expertise from the field with everyone so that we can all leap into a bright future together. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And also thanks for everyone who joined us as an audience member to this conversation. Thanks for sharing all your questions and being so curious. It was an absolute honor and joy to spend this hour with you. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, wherever you are in the world. Take care and goodbye.